The good news is they lost fast enough that I've got a chance to make the 8:30 showing of the Phantom Menace. What is up? What is going on, everybody? Welcome back and welcome into the Seattle Mariners post-game recap. Mariners dropped this one tonight 3-1 to the Minnesota Twins. They fall to 19-16 on the season, and pending the Texas-Oakland result, we'll see if they remain in first place in the AL West. Before I dive into it, 2 free, easy ways to help support my channel. Smash that like button. And if you're new here or just lurking, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I'm now just 29 subs away from 3,300. I truly cannot thank you all enough for the support. It's going to sound cheesy, but it warms my heart. It really does. The support and your guys' comments and likes really, really mean the world to me. And even in games like this, where it's a tough loss, I still look forward to coming on here and talking ball with you guys or to you guys or however you want to word it. Listen, last year I kind of had a saying, especially in the first half of the year, that I was out of caps to tip to opposing starting pitchers. It just got to a point where it was so frustrating when this offense couldn't get anything going that I just couldn't do it anymore. Like, yeah, good performance by an opposing pitcher, but eventually you've got to find a way. And Simeon Woods Richardson, listen, he threw the ball well. He deserves credit. I will never take credit away from an opponent that plays well. Thought he located his pitches really well. The changeup looked pretty nasty. The fastball, isn't thrown super hard, but again, pretty good location. And it looked like he kind of switched up the game plan. You were listening to the Mariners pregame. They talked about how he'd thrown a bunch of sliders and worked that in with the fastball. And it seemed like he barely threw the slider tonight. I don't have the data for exactly what it ended up being, but certainly, at least in the first few innings, he rarely threw it. So probably a guy that, doesn't have a ton of major league experience and, mixed up the scouting report a little bit on the Mariners, and they had trouble adjusting. And listen, if the Mariners offense was, putting up a bunch of runs, and to their credit, they did swing the bats okay in Houston. I guess that is Texas, but Houston to be more specific. But overall, like the offense still as a whole, it's shown flashes, has not been good. So it becomes harder for me to go, yeah, man, he dominated. Like last week when Max Fried shut us down, yeah, there was frustrating moments like to scratch out a run, but Max Fried is really, really good. Sometimes you just run into outstanding starting pitchers. Chris Sale's been dominant. I can't get too up in arms. That's going to happen. It would be like teams getting mad when Felix Hernandez shut them down in the in the early 2010s and late 2000s. Like Felix is really good. He's going to shut you down. You should be able to scratch out a couple runs against Woods Richardson. There's no reason you can't. I know his FIP's been really low this year. It's a small sample. Every number I'm about to say is a small sample, but we're still in general just small sample on the season. His FIP's been low, but his expected ERA is in the high 4s. You look at his Savant page, it is very blue. And listen, again, like those don't tell the whole story. He threw the ball well. I'm still at a point where I'll tip it a little bit, but you've got to be able to get at least 2 or 3 runs. I don't think any of us are asking for an 8 or 9. We're just asking for a couple. And it wasn't a game either where they put a bunch of base runners on and left them loaded. They didn't do anything against him. I think they had 2 or 3 base runners through 6 innings. I mean, they had 1 runner at second at one point, and it lasted for about 10 seconds. I don't know how many other ways to say it, but the offense has got to be better. Do I think it will? Yes, I still do. I still think it's going to be better. But that's the type of pitcher you need to get a couple runs off of. And like I said, I know his ERA has been low coming in to today. So listen, even if you want to look at the Savant page and go, he hasn't been good, he's obviously doing something right with his ERA being low, but it's still someone that I believe the Mariners should have been able to scrap out a couple runs against offensively. And it's the name of the game. Listen, Luis Castillo was outstanding. Ran into a little bit of trouble in the 7th. We'll talk about that, but he pitched well enough to win. It's kind of the same story with every Mariners loss, right? Starting pitching pitches well enough to win, and the offense doesn't quite do enough. It's kind of the MO for this team when they don't pull out a game. And, I'm not one to say, they wasted another starting pitching performance. With how great the starting rotation has been, I mean, almost every loss is going to be wasting a starting pitching performance at this point. So, losses are going to happen, obviously, but a frustrating one because another game that felt winnable. And this is a tough series. The Minnesota Twins are a good ball club. I know I just kind of, said Woods Richardson isn't very good, but overall, it's a good team. They mash right-handed pitching. Their bullpen is lights out at the back end, and their starters are pretty solid. I think the Mariners have the advantage in these games, starting pitcher for starting pitcher, but they're good enough that they can hold your lineup in check. And if they can squeak out some runs against your pitching, they'll beat you. And today was a game where the Mariners, I thought, had a pretty decent starting pitcher advantage. Tomorrow's going to be a tough one. Emerson Hancock against this lineup is could be trouble. That could absolutely be a game that could be trouble for the Mariners. Now you finish off with Gilbert and Kirby, so you feel pretty good there. But and I'm not trying to get on like, oh, it's going to spiral here or anything like that. Listen, me and Mariner Sir talked about it yesterday. I would absolutely sign up for a split in this series on the road against a good ball club, and you still have a great chance to do that here. So no necessarily like worries about where they're at in the standings and a loss, just frustration with the offense as a whole. And it's not going to get any easier. You got to face Bailey Ober, then Chris Paddock's looked good this year, and then Pablo Lopez is a really good pitcher. So it's not going to get any easier here the rest of the series. The Mariners are going to have to play better ball. If you want to get that split or still win the series, you absolutely have to dial in and play better baseball here because the Twins are a good team. They are a really, really good baseball team. Let's go ahead and go through the box score a little bit here, and then I'm going to get out because I wasn't kidding. I am going to try and catch the late showing of the Phantom Menace with the Mrs. Trident podcast tonight. So we're going to party it up 1998 style tonight. Listen, Luis Castillo was tremendous, 6 2/3. I guess they changed. I guess they took the error away from Ty France and gave the double to, was it Kepler that had? Yeah, it was Kepler had the double. So Castillo finishes 6 2/3, 3 hits, 3 runs, 3 earned, 3 walks, 7 Ks. I thought that should have been an error on Ty France. I think it was initially. I guess they changed it. That allowed the first run to score on the Correa double. Castillo was lights out until the 7th. I do want to talk about the 7th a little bit. So the Mariners are down 1-0. Let's talk about the top of the 7th, then I'll get into the bottom because I feel like I can't talk about the bottom of the 7th without talking about the top of the 7th. So the Mariners load Woods Richardson is out after 6. Griffin Jacks comes in. Mariners end up loading up the bases, nobody out. Polanco, Haniger get base hits. Cal walks. Ty strikes out. Tough game for Ty France today. Garver hits a sac fly, which I'll take it because it felt like that was going to be a double play right there. And the Mariners tie up the game at 1. That inning didn't bother me that much. Listen, yes, bases loaded, nobody out. You want to score more runs, right? Absolutely. But Griffin Jacks, Johan Duran are two of the best relievers in baseball. Like, that inning was not the problem. The problem was what they did for the first 6 innings against Woods Richardson. That's where the problem was. It wasn't the 7th. Yes, you'd like to score another run there. I'm not trying to let them off the hook for only getting 1. But Griffin Jacks is really good. The fact that you were able to get a run off of him is a positive. It really is. So that inning didn't actually bother me that much, to be honest. I was fine with that. Like, I probably shouldn't, not fine with it. You want more with the bases loaded, nobody out. You do. But I can excuse Griffin Jacks wiggling out of that with his stuff. It's still the first 6 innings that drove me nuts. Anyways, bottom of the 7th, you tie the game up. Castillo's been dominant. You feel pretty good that Castillo's going to get you into the dugout, tied at 1, and then maybe the offense can scratch out a run somehow against Duran, excuse me. He walks Max Kepler, which is super frustrating to start the inning. Like, just leadoff walks are always frustrating unless your team's the one doing the walking. Then it's great. Carlos Correa, who just had the Mariners number tonight, gets his second double. You've got second and third, nobody out. Who was it that lined out to Ty France? Willie Castro lines out or grounds out hard to Ty. Ty does the right thing, runs the runner back. The runners do advance, but they essentially get the out at home. So you got second and third, 1 out. They intentionally walk Carlos Santana, which Santana's been really bad this year. But I do get setting up the double play in that situation and getting the righty-righty matchup with Christian Vasquez. And Vasquez has been even worse than Santana. So I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. Like, I could get going after Santana there, but I don't have a huge problem. And you feel like, if you give up 2 runs, whatever, 1 run, 2 runs, it's probably the end of the game. It's kind of like pulling a goalie in hockey. Like, who cares? The next goal is going to bury you anyway, so whatever. So you have everything set up. You've got a guy that's been really struggling in Vasquez at the plate, a catcher without good speed, and you get ahead of him 0-2. And then Castillo throws a high fastball to him 0-2, elevated, and Vasquez lifts it out for a sac fly. None of this is to blame Luis Castillo for today. He was outstanding. He deserved a W, but that's got to be a better 0-2 pitch. I get you don't want to try and bury one because you've got the bases loaded and you don't want to give up a wild pitch. But man, if you're going to elevate that, really elevate it. Really elevate it. It was just at the top of the strike zone, probably a little up, but still just in a spot. And especially when you have a hitter 0-2, Vasquez is looking to do one thing at that point. Get me something elevated that I can just try and drive and get a sac fly. And that's what happened. Frustrating 0-2 pitch there for Luis Castillo. But listen, I'm nitpicking. Castillo was good enough to win this game. And he's really been lights out his last handful of starts. After a bit of a rocky start, Luis Castillo seems back. So a solid start for Castillo. Thornton comes in, an inning and a third, 2 hits, 2 strikeouts. I know people don't like Trent Thornton. I think Trent Thornton's fine. And you're also, remember, you're dealing with a bullpen that doesn't have 2 of its better arms in Matt Brash and Gregory Santos. So a guy like Thornton is going to be higher in the pecking order, whether you like him or not. And the hit he gave up to Margot, be honest, was an exit velo of like 70. That was a pretty good slider down and away that Margot just put his bat on and got it through. Nice piece of hitting by Margot. I thought Thornton was fine overall. I thought he did his job. I mean, it's frustrating to give up the hit with the runners in scoring position, but the Mariners probably weren't going to score off Duran anyways. So at the 2-1, it kind of felt over. But I thought Thornton was fine overall. Like, yeah, you don't want to give up the hit in that spot. I get it. But, listen, I'm spending way too much time talking about the pitching. The pitching did what they need to do. They held a good offense to 3 runs, 5 hits, and 3 walks. Like, they absolutely did everything they needed to do to win the game. Let's talk about the offense, shall we? 2 walks, 14 strikeouts, and I didn't mention it much in the Houston series that they really cut back on the strikeouts against Houston. And I thought maybe we were seeing the turning the page a little bit. Now, one game doesn't mean the page isn't turned, but kind of back to the strikeout formula against, listen, strikeout twice against Duran, Jax, and even Delbar, who's been struggling this year. Like, they're good relievers. They're going to miss some bats. But again, like Woods Richardson, 8 strikeouts. His career high had been 6, and he broke his career high in the top of the 3rd inning with 7 strikeouts. Like, come on with this offense, guys. Like, Josh Rojas 0 for 4. Josh gets a pass. He's been fantastic. Julio 0 for 4. It's just, Polanco was 1 for 4 with the base hit. Haniger 1 for 4 to base hit. Cal 0 for 2 with 2 walks. Solid. Ty France 0 for 3. Listen, with Ty France, like, yes, and I'm a savant guy. I look at all the data and everything, and it's still very red. But at some point, you have to have results to go with it. Like, I'm all for the data, and I'm all for, like, hey, this guy's FIP is 3. And it may, like, if a guy's got 70 RA, but his FIP is 3, it may show that he's probably better than his numbers would indicate. But at some point, you have to get the results, even from that pitcher. That doesn't mean you bury him and say you're done, but you have to have results eventually. And that's where I'm at with Ty France. Like, I get the Savant page looks great, and I'm not quite at the point where it's like, oh, bring up Lockley or let's make a trade or anything like that. I am curious if Ty can get out of this because the underlying data would show that he's hitting the ball harder and everything and should be better than this. But again, eventually you have to do results-based analysis with everything. I've even talked about it like, with this front office that I've supported. I think Jerry just, and I'm not trying to go on a huge rant. They're 19-16. They're fine. But like, I think Jerry Justin, Scott have all done a pretty good job here. You debate it, whatever. That's my take on it. But if this team wins 75 games this year, even if it's good process, eventually you got to say the results aren't there. You know what I mean? Eventually you have to look at them and say, whatever it's taken is not getting it done. The Seahawks, some great drafts the last few years. And some good defensive players added. But whatever Pete Carroll, Clinton Hurd, and company were doing on defense, it just wasn't producing results. And it was time to make a change. Do I think Ty can come out of it? Sure. If we look at the data, it would indicate he will. But it's got to happen eventually, too. So, I don't know where I'm quite at on Ty, and he's not a good defensive first baseman. I will say I think he's pretty good at, like, picking the ball on throws, but range-wise, and it's not the most important defensive position, but it's not like he's bringing that value to the table either. So we'll see what happens there. Maybe I'm just a little frustrated. Mitch Garver 1-for-2, and he had the sack fly RBI. I mean, that's as good as anybody did today, so I can't rail on that too much. Luke Raley 0-for-3, Dylan Moore 0-for-3. I thought Dylan did hit a couple balls hard, which again, more than a lot can say. And it wasn't a game where the Mariners were, hitting the ball super hard and just getting unlucky into outs. I'm going to assume their expected batting average, say, let's see if I can pull it up, was very low. They did not hit a lot of balls hard. Even in that rally against Griffin Jacks, Polanco had a solid base hit. I'm not going to lie. I did miss that one. I was grabbing something at the front door, so I did miss the Polanco hit. Haniger's, 3 feet to the left is probably a double play. Cal walks, you know what I mean? So even there, I don't think 151 was the expected batting average. Now the Twins was 196, and that's a testament to Castillo. And the hardest hit balls for the Mariners, Dylan Moore had a line out at 104 and Cal had a line out at 102. And there it is. Castillo does generate 14 swings and misses tonight as well, while I have Savant up there. So, in the beginning, I'm talking about the pitching way too much. Pitching was fine. Pitching absolutely did what they had to do, and that's a good Twins lineup. The offense has to be better. And I'm sounding like a broken record with it, but I don't know what else to say. And yes, there's moves you can make. You can get this offense better. You can make a trade. You can promote guys that you think may help. Maybe that is Tyler Locklear. I don't think that's the time yet, but it might be down the road. But some of these guys are going to have to hit because you cannot make 9 trades and acquire 9 new players. So eventually you just got to rely on some of these guys to get out of it and hit to the back of their baseball card at some point. I'm still a believer that it will happen. I do. I think they are good hitters. I think their track record show they've been good, and I think they'll get it going. But it's frustrating. It's frustrating while it's not happening because the pitching has been so good. And like I said, I don't go into like they're wasting the pitching because like the pitching's doing this every night. So it's like every loss is going to feel like that. But eventually it won't, right? Like tomorrow, Emerson Hancock against this Twins lineup, a little nervous, not gonna lie. I don't have a lot of faith that he's gonna get through this lineup. Not trying to be negative with that at all. So if Hancock throws 6 shutout innings, love it, absolutely love it. I just think it's going to be a tough lineup for him to face, and it's going to be a pretty big challenge. So maybe the offense gets going tomorrow, but then if Hancock struggles, eventually it can catch up to you. So listen, at the end of the day, the Mariners came off a really, really nice series win against the Houston Astros. This may be a game where let me back up a little bit. That's my R2-D2. I'm ready for the movie. And now I lost my train of thought completely. Nice job, Jay. Nice work. What was I going to say? Wow, I really lost my train of thought there. But, looking at spinning positives. So let me spin a couple positives. That's what I was going to say. It could just be they came off a really nice series against the Astros and a little bit of a letdown game. You get a huge emotional series win against a division rival. You have to go on the road. You don't get a day off, and you just struggle to hit, the Minnesota Twins. It's one of those things that if they bounce back tomorrow and then, the day after and everything like that, I can throw this one away easily. This could be an easy throwaway game for me in a couple days. Absolutely can. But there are just frustrating things that are, coming up with this team, and especially on the offensive side of the ball for sure. So, I hope it didn't come across too doom and gloom with anything. I'm still optimistic about this team. Still think they can be division champs. One game is not going to change that for me. And they're still, solid road trip 2-2. And if you can split this series, I'm fine with it. I'm absolutely fine with splitting with Minnesota. No problem with that. Then you come home for Oakland, Kansas City. Teams are playing much better than we thought they would, but I still think teams the Mariners should be beating. So we'll see. Hopefully bounce back tomorrow. Maybe Emerson Hancock's what they need. Maybe it's a solid Hancock start that gets things rolling for this ball club. So hopefully they can bounce back tomorrow. I want to see some offense. I just want to see this offense have a 6-run inning, and add on and be up 9-0 on somebody. And one of the problems is they played a tough schedule. So I'm probably asking a little too much with that. That's probably going to come as you start playing the White Sox and teams like that. So throw it away, frustrating, but let's, throw it away if they win tomorrow, and we'll get back to it. Thank you guys again. Remember to hit that like button, hit subscribe. I'll be back tomorrow with the post-game recap. As always, actually, I'll be back with a little bit more than the post-game recap tomorrow. Me and Jake from, it's Raise the Trident now, right, Jake? Let me look you up here because I know you changed your name, your YouTube channel. So let me find it for you. Yes, Jake from Raise the Trident and I will be live tomorrow for the play-by-play for Mariners and Twins. So hopefully we'll bring a little good luck charm. I don't know who's going to be Goldie and who's going to be Blowers and who's going to be Sims amongst the two of us, but he will be joining me on the channel tomorrow night. So tune in for that, guys. It's going to be a lot of fun. We'll talk some ball and we'll celebrate together or we'll cry together. We'll see what happens. But have a great night, everybody. Like, comment, subscribe, and I will catch you guys all tomorrow. Go Mariners. Peace.